One of the most important core concepts of DevOps is the idea of version control. Now, if you're a programmer, you're very familiar with the idea of version control because it's basically you get this version, you make changes, you save this version, you make changes, you get this version. So the idea is that if you make a mistake, you can revert back to a previous place where there was no mistake. Now, the most common tool that we use to do this, especially for text files, is Git. And there's an online repository called GitHub that most developers use. And then it's a public place that you can push. It can also be private, but it gives you the ability to publicly host your code and any changes that are there. So the process works like this. You make a change to the code, you commit that change to your Git repository, you push your local repository up to GitHub, and then whoever is in charge of the project merges your changes into the code. And then you get that changed code, you make new changes, you commit those changes, push those changes get merged. And it's a process whereby multiple developers can work on the same project because there may be more than one person making a change, more than one person committing changes, and then whoever is in charge decides which changes to merge into the project and which are just discarded. So it's a really powerful way to keep track of changes as they're made. In practice, it usually works like this. Let's say this is a developer place and we have Bob and Susie. They are both developers. Bob, on his computer, he's going to make some changes and he's going to save to his local Git repository on his computer, and then he's going to push those changes up to GitHub. Susie here is doing the same thing. She's a developer and she's making even more changes. She takes all of those changes, she saves them to her local Git repository, and she pushes those up to GitHub as well. And then Bob, the boss man over here, actually I don't remember what this guy's name was, but we'll say whatever his name is, the boss man then looks at the changes that they've put up there and pushed to GitHub and decides what changes go into the master. And then this is what the company uses for their code base. And the process goes all over. You know, they commit more changes, the boss man decides what gets committed to master, and then this is the new master. That's how it works. Now, I have a scenario for you. It's usually with code or with configuration files, but it can be with any sort of text that you're trying to manipulate. So I have a scenario here. We're in a biology lab, all right? And inside this biology lab, something weird happened, okay? The police were called, the investigators come in, they see blood stains on the floor, but there doesn't seem to be anything wrong. It's very, very suspicious and nobody's talking. So they get a warrant, they get the computer, they look on Bob's workstation here inside his My Project folder, and we'll see there's some files. There's lab notes. So let's look at the lab notes for this experiment that they've been doing. Day 1, subject stopped eating. Day 2, the subject said he was hungry but didn't want to eat any food we offered. And then all of a sudden, day 3, everything's fine, everything's fine, everything's fine, everything's fine. Well, that's suspicious because everything doesn't seem to be fine. Now, thankfully, Bob is somebody who uses Git for version control. So we're inside his project folder. We can say git log, and we're going to see the changes that he's committed to his local Git repository. The first one here, it says he made significant changes. And then the next one here, it says experiment going wrong. Well, that's weird because the lab notes don't seem to reflect anything going wrong. So it looks like maybe there was a cover-up and somebody changed Bob's notes. Well, since he made a commit, we can actually get that back. We can say git reset hard. And now if we look at lab notes, oh, the change that he saved where it said things are going wrong tells a little bit different story. Subject nose fell off. He ate Dr. Smith's brains. Dr. Smith then says he's hungry, and Dr. Smith has eaten the intern's brain. So obviously there was a zombie attack that happened, and whoever tried to cover it up thought that they could just change the text file. They didn't think about version control. And that just goes to show that proper version control can save the whole world. Now, honestly, whether this process is going to save the world from a zombie apocalypse, I'm not confident in saying that. But if you're into DevOps, using version control and usually using Git for version control is vital if you want to have a collaborative environment where people can share their changes and have backups when things go wrong, like the zombies attack.